Have you ever walked away from a moment, heard the heavy words unsaid, and felt that silence echo louder than any scream? Silence is not always peace. Sometimes it is the weight that drags the soul into regret. The Stoics, masters of restraint, knew the power of holding one's tongue, but they also knew that there are moments when silence is not wisdom. It is abandonment of one's duty. Epictetus taught that we are not disturbed by events, but by our judgments about them. And yet when injustice stands before us, when truth is at stake, judgment demands voice. Seneca warned that a life too quiet may be one too complicit. Even Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, in all his calm reflection, reminded himself daily that to be good is not merely to think, but to act. This is not a call for noise. It is a reminder of discernment, of knowing when silence preserves peace and when it protects evil. In a world that often rewards compliance and punishes conviction, it takes courage to speak with clarity, without ego, without rage, but with purpose. There are moments in life when your voice is not just wanted, it is needed. Times when remaining silent is not neutral, but a quiet surrender of your values. What are those moments? Let's explore 5 situations where silence is no longer a virtue, but a betrayal. Stay with me. One day you might face one of them, and when that day comes, you'll want to remember what to do. Number 1, when injustice stands before you. Have you ever been in a room where something clearly wrong was happening, and everyone stayed silent? A cruel comment aimed at a colleague, a dishonest move in a meeting, someone being excluded or humiliated while others awkwardly look away. In that moment, your pulse quickens. You feel a tightening in your chest. Your instincts whisper, "This isn't right." And just as quickly, another voice follows, "Stay out of it." Silence in that moment feels safe, comfortable, harmless. You might even tell yourself you're being stoic, calm, detached, composed. But true stoicism is not passivity. It is clarity, responsibility, and moral courage. The Stoics taught us to master our impulses, but never to suppress our conscience. Seneca warned, "He who does not prevent a crime when he can encourages it." To see injustice and do nothing is not restraint. It is quiet surrender. And in that surrender, we lose a piece of ourselves. Think of a common scenario. You're in a workplace meeting. Your teammate who worked tirelessly on a project is overlooked while someone else takes the credit. You glance around, others notice, but no one speaks. The person sits in silence, maybe even smiles politely, but inside you know it stings. Now, imagine you say just one sentence. "Actually, I believe that idea originally came from Alex." Calm. Simple, no drama, just truth. That small act might not change the world, but it shifts the room. It restores dignity. It reminds everyone that someone noticed and someone cared. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Injustice doesn't always arrive in the form of great battles or historical moments. Often it walks quietly beside us, in the school hallway, the office boardroom, the family dinner, and it survives not because people agree with it, but because people stay silent. A Stoic doesn't speak for applause. He doesn't confront for the sake of pride. He speaks because he knows that silence in the face of wrong is not peace. It is betrayal to your values, your reason, your sense of who you are. This doesn't mean rushing into every conflict or acting from emotion. Quite the opposite. The Stoic way is measured. It pauses before it speaks. But when the choice is clear, when right and wrong stand before you, your voice must rise to meet the moment. Consider history's darker hours, not just tyrants and oppressors, but the silent crowds, the neighbors who looked away, the bystanders who whispered, "It's not my place." That silence is not neutral. It is fertile ground for evil. But the opposite is also true. Courage is contagious. When one person speaks, others remember their voice too. And often, all it takes is that first spark. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present and principled. Injustice thrives in silence, but it trembles at truth. Your voice, grounded in reason and virtue, is one of the strongest tools you have, not to dominate, not to shame, but to preserve what is right. So when injustice stands before you, do not look away. Do not tell yourself it's someone else's fight. The moment may be small. The stakes may seem low, but what you choose in that instant shapes more than you realize, because in that moment, you are not just choosing whether to speak, you are choosing who you are. And a Stoic always chooses to live in alignment with what is just, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Number 2, when your principles are challenged. What defines a person when the crowd turns? When values are mocked and pressure mounts, there comes a time in every life when your principles, those quiet commitments you've made to yourself, will be put to the test, not in a courtroom, not in a grand debate, but in everyday moments that pass almost unnoticed by others, yet weigh heavily on your soul. A group of friends laughs over something you find degrading. Your co-workers cut corners to meet a deadline. You're invited to join, but everything in you resists. And in that silence, a question arises. Do I speak up, or do I blend in? Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The Stoics knew that virtue is not proclaimed in ease. It's proven in discomfort. What you stand for means little until it's challenged. Let's consider a familiar story. Imagine someone committed to self-discipline. He wakes early, eats simply, avoids distractions. One day, among peers, his choices are ridiculed. Loosen up, they say. Don't be so rigid. Life's short. Laughter follows. He feels the heat of their judgment, the tug to explain, or worse, to compromise. But this is the Stoic test. Do you abandon your values for belonging? Or do you hold firm, not out of pride, but out of fidelity to your higher self? A Stoic does not need applause, nor does he fear mockery. His principles are not costumes for display. They are anchors, and when the sea of opinion turns turbulent, they are what keep him steady. Marcus Aurelius faced this daily as emperor, surrounded by flattery, manipulation, and political pressure. He reminded himself in his journal not to seek the approval of others, but to live in accordance with nature, with reason, with virtue. If it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. His clarity didn't isolate him, it liberated him. Now, back to the everyday. Perhaps you've chosen honesty in a workplace that rewards smooth talk over truth. Perhaps you've committed to simplicity in a culture obsessed with excess. Perhaps you value kindness in a world that calls it weakness. In each case, your principles will invite resistance, But silence in those moments is not peace, it is quiet erosion. The Stoic path is not loud or aggressive. You don't need to argue, persuade, or win. You simply need to remain true. Speak calmly, act consistently, and let your integrity speak louder than any defense. And if words are needed, let them be few but firm. I don't drink. Thanks. I'd prefer to do it the right way. I don't find that kind of joke funny. Simple sentences. No lectures, no judgment, just presence and strength. You may lose approval, but you will keep something far more valuable, yourself. A Stoic speaks not to change the world in that moment, but to avoid being changed by it. When your principles are challenged, silence can seem like a shield, but over time it becomes a prison. Every time you swallow your truth to fit in, you shrink, and one day you may not recognize what you've become. So when that moment comes, and it will, when your discipline is mocked, your values questioned, your virtue misunderstood, remember this: the world may test you, but it cannot define you. Only you can do that. And sometimes all it takes is one steady voice, yours. Number 3, when falsehood dominates the room. Have you ever sat in a room where someone confidently speaks a lie and everyone nods along? It may be in a meeting where numbers are twisted to make failure look like success. It may be at a dinner table where someone spreads gossip dressed as fact, or in the media where repetition turns speculation into truth. And you sit there uneasy. You know what was said isn't right, but the moment passes and you say nothing. The Stoics warned us, falsehood isn't just the enemy of truth, it is the enemy of freedom. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, taught that philosophy is not a pursuit of comfort, it is a pursuit of truth. And truth, like virtue, demands courage, because lies are rarely shouted by villains, they are whispered by crowds, polished by clever words, made attractive by convenience. And when left unchallenged, they do not merely linger, they spread. Imagine a workplace scenario. A new employee is blamed for a mistake he didn't make. The real cause was poor leadership, but the narrative has already formed. The manager, respected and persuasive, subtly shifts blame. The room nods. The accused looks stunned, unsure whether to defend himself, and everyone else is silent. You know the truth. You saw what happened, and yet your mind races. Is it worth it? Will they turn on me too? This is the test. Stoicism does not call for drama, it calls for clarity. You don't need to shout or shame. You only need to stand firm. To say, perhaps quietly, actually, I believe there's more to that story, or from what I saw, I don't think that's accurate. Simple words, but powerful, because in a room full of falsehood, even a whisper of truth can shake the walls. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth." That is the Stoic posture, not stubborn pride, but humble allegiance to what is real. When deception dominates, a Stoic speaks not to win, but to anchor themselves to reality. Falsehood wears many masks. It can look like office politics, social media misinformation, cultural half-truths, or even the stories we tell ourselves to avoid accountability. And every time a lie is left unchallenged, it becomes a little stronger, a little more accepted, a little more normal. But truth is not noise. It does not need to overpower. It only needs to endure. Seneca warned that truth, once betrayed becomes a source of shame, not because others believed the lie, but because we did nothing when we could have spoken. And over time, that shame turns inward. It becomes silence we cannot shake. Consider this, pain. When you allow a lie to stand uncontested, you are not just protecting others' comfort. You are sacrificing your own integrity. A Stoic knows the cost is too high. This does not mean becoming combative or self-righteous. The Stoic way is to speak with precision, not pride, with calm, not condemnation. The goal is not to crush the liar, it is to defend the truth. So when falsehood dominates the room, ask yourself, if I don't speak now, who will? And what becomes of me if I stay silent? You may face resistance. You may feel alone, but truth, like the sun, does not need to argue. It only needs to rise. In a world where perception often overshadows reality, your voice, measured, reasoned, principled, can be a light, not to blind others, but to guide them, and to remind yourself you are not here to conform to the world's illusions. You are here to live in accordance with truth, even if your voice shakes, even if no one claps. Especially then, number 4, when someone you love walks into darkness. There are few pains sharper than watching someone you love slowly lose themselves. Maybe it starts subtly, missed calls, a change in tone, a certain emptiness behind their smile. Then come the patterns you can't ignore, destructive habits, unhealthy relationships, or a slow drift into apathy, bitterness, or despair. You want to believe it will pass, that they'll find their way, that it's not your place to interfere. But silence in these moments is not compassion, it is quiet surrender. A Stoic is not indifferent. He does not close his heart to the suffering of others, especially not those he loves. True, we are not in control of anyone's choices. We cannot force change. But Stoicism doesn't absolve us of responsibility. It clarifies it. It teaches that while the outcomes lie beyond our reach, our duty to act with courage and care remains. Seneca once said, sometimes, even to live is an act of courage, and sometimes to help another live. To truly live, you must be willing to speak, even when your words may be met with resistance, even when you risk anger, distance, or rejection. Imagine this: your younger brother, once full of life, begins slipping into a pattern of late nights, isolation, and drinking. At first it's easy to brush off. He says he's fine, but over time, the signs grow louder, and so does your silence. You tell yourself, it's not my business. He's an adult. I don't want to push him away, but deep down, you know this is the moment where love must be stronger than fear. You don't need to lecture. You don't need to fix everything, but you do need to speak. Even something as simple as, I've noticed you're not yourself lately, and am worried about you, can open a door that shame had closed, a door that says, you are not alone. Will it always be enough? No. Will you always be heard? No. But a Stoic does not measure his duty by the outcome. He measures it by his willingness to act despite uncertainty. Stoicism teaches us to be still, but not passive, detached from outcomes, but never detached from our principles or from those we love. Speaking up is not about control. It's about integrity, about refusing to turn away when someone you care for is fading. There's also the quieter forms of darkness. A friend who's lost their ambition, a partner drifting into resentment, a parent consumed by regret. Their suffering may not explode outward, but it corrodes from within. And once again, silence feels easier. But comfort is not kindness, and avoidance is not virtue. Sometimes they may lash out. They may reject your concern. But sometimes, just sometimes, your words may be the very thing they need to hear, not because they offer a solution, but because they remind them someone still sees them. Someone still cares enough to speak. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. But in the face of someone's suffering, to say nothing when your heart urges otherwise is neither right nor true. So, when someone you love walks into darkness, don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't tell yourself your silence is respect. Speak gently, firmly, from a place not of judgment, but of genuine care. You may not always save them, but you will know that when the moment came, you did not run, you stood with them, even if only for a moment, as a voice of reason, of compassion, of truth. And that, for a Stoic, is enough. Number 5. When you know the truth but fear speaking it. There are moments in life when the truth is clear, undeniable, urgent, burning within you like a fire seeking air. You feel it in your chest, a weight that won't leave you. You know what needs to be said, but then fear steps in, fear of rejection, fear of backlash, fear of standing alone. Fear is the great silencer. It doesn't always shout, often it whispers, stay quiet. Don't steer the waters. Protect yourself, and many obey, not because they lack truth, but because they lack the courage to voice it. But Stoicism offers no refuge in silence born of fear. It offers clarity. Memento Mori, remember, you will die, a sobering thought, yet deeply empowering. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily of mortality, not to surrender to dread, but to strip away illusion. What will all our fears mean when our time runs out? And more importantly, what will we regret? It won't be the awkward moments. It won't be the criticism. It will be the truth we buried. The things we could have said but didn't. The people we could have helped but let walk in darkness. The chance we had to stand tall and chose instead to disappear into the crowd. Imagine this. A friend is being unfairly blamed at work. You were there, you know the truth. But speaking up might put you in the spotlight. It might risk your position. So you hesitate. You tell yourself, it's not my fight. But days later, it lingers. That moment replays in your mind. And in your silence, something in you feels smaller. Or maybe it's a personal relationship. Someone you love is living in denial, hurting themselves or others. You see it clearly, but the truth is sharp, and you're afraid of how it will land. So you stay quiet, waiting for a better time. But that time never comes. And slowly, your silence becomes part of the problem. Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Fear makes us suffer in advance, yet rarely saves us from the pain we fear. And worse, it robs us of the integrity we need to live honestly. Speaking the truth doesn't require harshness. A Stoic doesn't raise his voice out of anger or pride. He speaks with calm, with reason, and with conviction, not to win arguments, but to remain faithful to what is right. Your voice, when guided by principle, can be firm without aggression, honest without cruelty, strong without spectacle. Sometimes it only takes one sentence, I don't believe that's true. I need to be honest with you. I was there. And that's not what happened. They may not change everything, but they change you. They remind you that you are not a passive observer in life. You are an agent of character, of conscience, and even if the world doesn't listen, you will know that you did. Stoicism teaches us that we cannot control the outcome, only the action, whether your truth is accepted, dismissed, or ridiculed is not your burden. Your task is to speak it with integrity when the moment demands it, because if you don't, who will? So, when the truth rises in you, when fear tightens your throat and tells you to wait, ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? Not just in comfort, but under pressure. Not just when it's easy, but when it counts. This is the final challenge of silence, to resist the urge to disappear when your voice is most needed, to choose courage over comfort, and to remember, a truth unspoken is a truth abandoned. A life of silence is not peace, it is surrender, and a Stoic never surrenders to fear. A Stoic does not speak to fill the silence. He speaks when the moment demands honesty, when silence would betray his conscience. His words are not for praise or approval, but for truths, spoken with calm, with courage, and with care. In your life, there will be times when you're called to speak. Some moments will seem small, others will test your very core. When that time comes, don't let fear hold your voice. Speak not to be heard by many, but to be true to yourself. The world has enough noise. What it needs are voices that rise with purpose, steady and sincere. If this message spoke to you, drop a quick "speak truth" in the comments. Let's remind each other we're not alone in this path. And if you're wondering what happens when you stop giving people second chances, the Stoics have something to say about that too. Stay tuned. You're stronger than you think. Keep choosing truth. Have you ever wondered why some days feel heavier than others, without anything visible weighing you down? It's not always what we carry in our hands, but what we carry in our hearts and minds. Silent obligations, outdated beliefs, unresolved emotions, and connections that no longer bring meaning. Like invisible stones in a bag, they accumulate slowly until even the simplest step forward feels like a struggle. Stoic wisdom teaches that peace isn't found in control, but in clarity, and clarity often begins with subtraction, removing what no longer serves our purpose, even if it once did. But letting go doesn't have to be loud. There's no need for drama, declarations, or explanations. In fact, the most powerful changes are often the quietest ones, the kind done not to prove a point, but to reclaim one's path. Today, we'll explore a few of these hidden weights, subtle things that may be shaping your days more than you realize, not through judgment but through reflection, not to escape life, but to return to it with less noise and more truth. This isn't about perfection. It's about space, space to breathe, to think, to be. If any part of this feels familiar, stay with it. You might not need to add anything new to feel better. Maybe you just need to let a few things go. Let's begin. Number 1, let go of drama that isn't yours. Have you ever noticed how easily other people's problems become your own? A friend in constant crisis. A family member always caught in conflict. A loved one whose pain spills into every conversation. At first it feels natural to step in, to comfort, to help, to fix. But over time, the line between compassion and self-neglect begins to blur. The Stoics teach that peace is a discipline, one that requires clarity about what belongs to us and what does not. Tranquility, wrote Marcus Aurelius, is found when we free ourselves from the weight of others' affairs. It sounds simple, but when emotions and relationships are involved, detachment feels almost like betrayal. Consider the story of John, a middle-aged man working full-time while caring for his aging parents. When his younger brother fell into debt and emotional turmoil, John stepped in again. He offered money, advice, even took on extra work to help. Months passed. The brothers' situation barely improved, but John's health declined. His patience wore thin, and the peace at home was lost. One day, his mother gently asked, "Why are you carrying his burden as if it's your own?" The question struck deep. In his effort to protect, John had forgotten a simple truth. Every person walks their own path. Letting go of others' drama doesn't mean turning your back. It means recognizing your limits. It means understanding that true support empowers others. It doesn't replace their responsibility. Stoicism reminds us we cannot live other people's lives. We can offer a hand, but we cannot walk the road for them. Too often, the desire to help turns into silent resentment. The energy spent managing someone else's chaos steals from the energy needed to tend to one's own life. Love becomes obligation. Empathy becomes exhaustion. And somewhere along the way, we begin to forget what peace even feels like. The Stoics would call this a confusion of roles. Epictetus warned against trying to control what lies beyond our sphere. And another timeless reminder from Seneca echoes this truth. A man who is at peace with himself needs nothing from anyone. Peace doesn't come from solving everything. It comes from knowing what is and isn't yours to carry. So ask yourself, where have you taken on emotional weight that was never yours? In which relationships have you replaced support with sacrifice? How many moments of stillness have been traded for chaos that doesn't belong to you? Choosing peace doesn't mean you love less. It means you love wisely. It means allowing others to learn, to stumble, and to grow, just as you have. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for them is to step back and trust that their path, however messy, is their own to walk. Number 2, the guilt that comes with saying no. How many times have you agreed to something you didn't truly want, just to avoid discomfort? Maybe it was a favor you didn't have the energy for, a gathering you had no desire to attend, or a responsibility that stretched you too thin. You said yes because saying no felt risky, like it might lead to disappointment, tension, or rejection. But each time you ignore your own needs to please someone else, a quiet price is paid. That price is your peace of mind. Stoic philosophy teaches that we should never place our well-being in the hands of others. Epictetus once said, "If you want to be free, don't wish for things to happen as you want, but wish for them to happen as they do." And things happen. Requests, demands, expectations. The question is whether we allow them to dictate our lives. Let's look at Jack, a retired mechanic living a quiet life in Ohio. Jack had always been the go-to guy for his family. If someone needed help moving, repairing a car, or lending money, Jack was there. One weekend, his daughter asked him to help with home renovations. Despite knowing his knees had been acting up, Jack agreed as always. But halfway through the day, he slipped and aggravated an old injury. Laid up for weeks, he finally saw the pattern. His constant yes had become a silent no to his own health. It wasn't love that made him say yes. It was fear that saying no would disappoint the people he cared about. But fear is not a foundation for peace. And love doesn't thrive on silent sacrifice. It grows through mutual respect. Saying no isn't rejection, it's honesty. It draws a line between what you can give and what you cannot. It tells others and yourself that your energy, time, and body are not infinite. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, never value the approval of the crowd over your own inner compass. True integrity is found in listening to that inner voice, even when it trembles. The first no might feel heavy. The fear of being seen as selfish or unkind may surface. But over time, clarity replaces anxiety, and you may find that people begin to respect your boundaries, perhaps even more than your sacrifices. Ask yourself, how often have you traded peace for approval? How many yeses were born from guilt, not generosity? And what might your life look like if your choices reflected your values, not your fears? To say no is to protect what matters, your health, your priorities, your freedom. As Seneca once said, no person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't have, and to cheerfully put up with what they do have. Choose wisely what you carry, because sometimes the strongest boundary is the quiet courage to say, not this time. Number 3, who you were is not who you are. There are moments when the past calls louder than the present. A familiar scent, a photograph, a quiet afternoon. Suddenly, the mind drifts to a different time. Maybe it was 20 years ago, when strength came easier, when life felt full of purpose, or when responsibilities gave a clearer sense of identity. Nostalgia often arrives dressed in beauty, but behind that beauty lies a hidden trap. The Stoics remind us that the only moment we truly possess is the present. Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." When we cling to a former version of ourselves, we suffer twice, once for what we believe we've lost, and again by refusing to embrace who we are now. Nostalgia idealizes the past. It smooths over the rough edges, and highlighting the joy while blurring the pain. But memory is selective. It doesn't always tell the whole truth. What we miss isn't always the reality. It's the feeling, the sense of certainty, youth, or importance we associate with that time. And in doing so, we unfairly compare our current self to a version that may never have been as perfect as we remember. Take the example of Linda, a former nurse in her early 60s. Her days used to be filled with urgency and purpose. Now retired, she finds herself struggling with silence. She often says, "I used to feel needed, now I just feel invisible." But over time, Linda began to see what the present offered: freedom, reflection, and the chance to care for herself in a way she never could before. Her worth hadn't vanished, it had simply shifted. The present can feel unfamiliar because it asks us to stop performing and start being. But that's where its power lies. It's not defined by who you were, but by who you choose to become now. Epictetus taught it's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. The same applies to aging, to change, to time passing. What matters most is not that yesterday looked different, but that today still holds infinite potential. Nostalgia isn't the enemy, but when it becomes a lens through which we judge the present, it robs us of peace. Instead of longing for who you once were, be grateful for who you've become. With age comes depth, With quiet comes clarity. With stillness comes the chance to listen more closely to yourself, to life, to what's possible now. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." That doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means honoring it, learning from it, and then returning to the only place where life actually happens, here. So ask yourself, what part of your past are you holding on to that's keeping you from embracing today? You haven't lost yourself, you've evolved, and in that evolution lies wisdom, strength, and the quiet joy of being fully present. You are not who you were, and that's not a loss, it's growth. Number 4, when love becomes emotional dependence. There comes a quiet moment in life when the roles begin to shift. The children who once needed you for everything now move forward with lives of their own, careers, relationships, responsibilities, and priorities that no longer revolve around you. For many, this transition brings not only pride, but also a quiet ache. It's natural to want closeness, to feel remembered and needed. But when your emotional well-being begins to depend on how often they call, how much time they offer, or how deeply they validate your place in their lives, something subtle begins to shift. Love turns into longing, connection becomes expectation, and the relationship can quietly become unbalanced, not out of malice, but because time and change are inevitable. Stoic wisdom reminds us that nothing outside our control should govern our peace. Epictetus said, "Nothing in the world has power over you unless you allow it." When your happiness hinges on someone else's actions, even your children's, you surrender that peace. This kind of emotional dependence doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides in small gestures, a comment when weeks pass without a visit, a sigh when a message goes unanswered, or the quiet emptiness that follows every unmet expectation. But here's the truth, only you can fill that space. Your children were never meant to carry the full weight of your fulfillment. Consider Martha, a retired librarian from Indiana. After her children moved away, she waited for calls that didn't come as often as she hoped. She'd say things like, "I guess you're too busy for your mother now," not out of spite, but out of quiet pain. Over time, she began volunteering at the local shelter, picked up watercolor painting, and reconnected with friends. She didn't stop loving her children, she simply stopped relying on them to complete her. To love deeply does not mean to depend entirely. You can offer support without expectation. You can be present without attachment. When you free your children from the burden of being your emotional anchor, something profound happens. The relationship becomes lighter, more honest, more enduring. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, and thoughts rooted in freedom, not dependence, build relationships that breathe, where love is given freely, not traded for attention." Ask yourself, what part of your peace have you placed in your children's hands? And what might you reclaim if you began building a life beyond that expectation? This isn't about letting go of love. It's about letting go of the weight love shouldn't have to carry. By doing so, you not only nurture your own well-being, but you offer your children the greatest gift, a love that's unconditional, resilient, and free. Number 5, the things that no longer serve you. Sometimes the heaviest things we carry aren't on our backs. They sit quietly on a shelf, in a drawer, or hidden in a box we haven't opened in years. A porcelain figurine, an old sweater, a book never read. These objects may seem small, but the emotional weight attached to them can quietly shape our inner world. Stoic philosophy reminds us that freedom comes not from what we own, but from what we can let go of. Seneca wrote, "No wind is favorable for the one who doesn't know where they're going," and yet, many of us keep things that point us backward, objects tied not to present value, but to memories, loss, or guilt. Consider Bill, a retired teacher in Virginia. While clearing out his attic, he came across a cracked music box that once belonged to his mother. He hadn't touched it in over a decade. "It reminds me of her," he said, "but I don't even like the tune anymore." He kept it not because it brought him joy, but because parting with it felt like letting go of her memory. But memory doesn't live in objects. It lives in us. Many items we hold on to are not practical, nor do they spark joy. We keep them because we fear that discarding them means discarding the person or moment they represent. But this is an illusion. You don't need to carry a thing to carry its meaning. Letting go doesn't erase the past. It clears space for the present. Emotional attachment to things often comes with a silent burden, the guilt of giving something away, the fear of forgetting, the weight of sentimentality. But when you pause and ask yourself honestly, does this still serve me, or am I afraid to let go? You begin to separate the object from the emotion. And that's where freedom begins. Letting go doesn't mean emptying your life of everything that holds meaning. It means being intentional. Keep what aligns with who you are now, not who you were. Your space should reflect your present, not become a museum of your past. Think of the mind like a room. Clutter it with too many things, and there's little room to move, to breathe, to grow. But when you clear away what no longer fits, you make space not just on your shelves, but in your thoughts, your energy, your direction. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." And sometimes, changing the way we think starts with a simple act, letting go of what no longer belongs. So take a moment, look around. Ask yourself, not with guilt, but with honesty, is this bringing me peace? Or is it just here out of habit? Because the things you choose to keep should support your life today, not anchor you to a version of it that's already gone. Number 6, relationships that drain more than they give. As we grow older, something becomes clear. It's not how many people are in your life that matters. It's who. In youth, there's often a desire to be surrounded, to be liked, to belong. But with time comes the understanding that not all relationships are equal. Some uplift, others quietly erode your peace. The Stoics spoke often about the company we keep. Seneca once advised, associate with people who are likely to improve you. And yet, many find themselves entangled in relationships that do the opposite, those that take more than they give, that leave you feeling heavier, not lighter. These relationships aren't always dramatic or overtly toxic. Sometimes they come cloaked in familiarity, a friend who only calls when they need something, a relative whose words subtly chip away at your confidence, a long-time connection that no longer aligns with your values. They may not mean harm, but their presence drains your emotional reserves day by day. Think of emotional energy like sunlight in a garden. If weeds grow unchecked, they crowd out the flowers. They absorb light, water, space, leaving little for what's meant to thrive. The same is true with people. When you allow draining relationships to linger without boundaries, they take up room meant for growth, joy, and clarity. This doesn't always mean cutting people out completely. Sometimes the solution is a shift in how you engage. Boundaries are a form of wisdom, not rejection. You can care from a distance, listen without absorbing, be present without being consumed. Consider James, a former firefighter in his late 50s. After years of being the reliable one in everyone's life, he began to notice that certain friendships revolved around solving others' problems, but never sharing in joy. He felt depleted. After a long reflection, he began setting boundaries, answering calls less frequently, saying no without guilt, and investing more time in relationships that brought balance. What he found wasn't loneliness, it was clarity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and those thoughts are shaped in part by the people around us. If a relationship consistently leaves you anxious, insecure, or emotionally empty, it may be time to reassess, not out of anger but out of respect for your own well-being. Ask yourself who in your life brings you peace, support, and inspiration, and who pulls you into a cycle of negativity. Guilt or emotional fatigue, it's not selfish to protect your energy, it's essential. Because when you are at peace, you can offer presence instead of resentment, love instead of obligation. And from that place of strength, you'll attract the kind of connections that nourish, not deplete the soul. Number 7, stop explaining yourself. One of the heaviest, yet quietest, burdens many carry is the constant need to justify themselves, to explain choices, defend preferences, or seek validation for simply living according to their own rhythm. Whether it's deciding to stay in rather than attend a gathering, spending money on something joyful instead of something practical, or choosing rest over obligation, there's often a lingering pressure to offer a reason just to be accepted. But where does this come from? Often it's born from a desire to be understood, to avoid conflict, or to maintain harmony. Yet when this habit takes root, it begins to erode something essential, your autonomy. Slowly, your peace becomes dependent on how others perceive you, and you shrink, not in worth, but in confidence. Marcus Aurelius cautioned, "If you worry about what others think, you will be their slave," and there's truth in that. When your choices must pass through someone else's judgment before feeling valid, you no longer live for yourself. You don't need to explain why you value solitude, why you walk away from relationships that no longer feel healthy, why you choose peace over pleasing. Others may form opinions, but they don't walk in your shoes, feel your emotions, or carry your daily weight. And more often than not, trying to justify yourself doesn't bring deeper understanding. It just drains energy and reinforces the illusion that their approval is necessary for your freedom. Consider Emily, a woman in her 50s who decided to enroll in a dance class. Friends questioned, "Isn't that for younger people?" But she smiled and said, "It's for anyone who loves to move." That's all the explanation she gave, and all she needed. Her joy didn't require a defense. Letting go of the need to explain doesn't mean closing off or being cold. It means standing rooted in your own values. It means saying, "This is what I need right now," without apology. That kind of clarity isn't arrogance, it's self-respect. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Your life will always speak louder than your words. Live with intention, not for permission. Ask yourself, how many times have you stayed silent about a dream, delayed a decision, or avoided a change just to avoid being judged? And how would your life feel if your choices no longer required consensus? People's opinions are temporary. Your peace of mind, however, can last a lifetime if you choose to protect it. The next time you feel the urge to justify, pause, breathe, and remember, you don't owe anyone an explanation. To live authentically is not to reject others, it's to honor yourself. And when you do that, you free not only your time and energy, but your very spirit. Because in the end, the most powerful kind of freedom is the one where you no longer ask for permission to be who you already are. If you've stayed until the end, it means you're someone who values clarity, growth, and the quiet strength of letting go. That deserves recognition. Take a moment and comment live lightly below just to let it be known you're choosing peace over pressure, freedom over fear. If this message resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might need a gentle reminder that they too can release what no longer serves them. Sometimes a simple word is enough to spark a new beginning. And if you're ready to continue this journey, there's more ahead, more reflections, more insight, and more tools to help you live with intention and inner calm. You don't need to carry everything. You're allowed to set it down. And when you do, you create space for something far greater, the life that's waiting to meet you. Until next time, stay grounded, stay light, and keep moving forward. Have you ever walked away from a conversation thinking, I shouldn't have said that? In a world that rewards quick replies and louder voices, silence can feel like weakness. But the Stoics saw it differently. To them, silence wasn't retreat. It was mastery. A disciplined mind doesn't rush to speak. It observes, it listens, it waits. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm. Everyone is shouting, defending, reacting, but there you are, calm, still, unmoved. That is the strength of silence. It's not about hiding your voice. It's about choosing when your voice truly matters. Today, we explore 7 moments when silence isn't just wise. It's powerful moments when holding back protects your peace, sharpens your focus, and shows true strength. You might recognize yourself in more of them than you think. And the last one, it's something most people overlook. But once you understand it, it will change the way you handle conflict forever. So stay with me, reflect, observe. This might be the quiet lesson you've been needing. Number 1, when emotions are controlling you. One of the most powerful moments to choose silence is when your emotions are louder than your reason. We've all felt it, that sudden rush of anger when someone says something unfair, or that sting of hurt when we're misunderstood. The instinct is to fire back, to defend ourselves, to prove a point. But in those moments, you're not speaking from wisdom. You're speaking from a wound. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that when we let emotions drive our actions, we surrender control. And nothing is more dangerous than words spoken in anger. They often hit harder than intended and land where they weren't meant to. Once spoken, they can't be unsaid. You might win the moment but lose something far more important: trust, respect, or even your own inner peace. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Staying silent in a storm of emotion isn't weakness. It's strength under pressure. It's stepping back instead of lashing out. It's giving yourself the dignity of a second thought before saying something you'll regret. Let me share a story. A man I once met, let's call him Marcus, worked under a manager who often criticized him unfairly, sometimes even in front of others. After a tough week, Marcus found himself publicly called out for a mistake he didn't make. The room was silent, all eyes on him. His fists clenched, his heart raced. Every part of him wanted to shout back, but instead he took a slow breath and said nothing. Later that day, after the heat of the moment had passed, Marcus asked for a private meeting. Calmly, he explained his side, brought clarity to the situation, and even suggested a better process to avoid similar issues. His silence in the moment of confrontation didn't make him look weak. It made him look composed, professional, and trustworthy. His manager not only respected his response, but eventually relied on him more than ever. So, how do we practice this kind of restraint? First, pause. When your emotions flare, that's your signal to breathe, not speak. Second, ask yourself, will this matter tomorrow? In most cases, it won't. And third, remember the power of silence. Not every attack needs a counter. Not every insult deserves your energy. The truth is, silence gives you space. Space to think, to reflect, to respond with intention rather than impulse. It's a quiet kind of strength, the kind that builds character rather than chaos. Master your emotions, and you begin to master your life. And sometimes, the first step is simply staying silent until your wisdom, not your rage, is ready to speak. Number 2, when someone wants to provoke you. There are moments in life when silence becomes your strongest defense, especially when someone is trying to get under your skin. You've felt it before, a sarcastic comment in a meeting, a passive-aggressive jab during a conversation, or someone pushing your buttons just to see you lose your cool. Their goal isn't truth, it's reaction, and the moment you take the bait, you've given them exactly what they wanted: control. The Stoics warned us about this. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That's not just a quote. It's a strategy. When someone acts out of pettiness, ego, or insecurity, responding in kind only mirrors their weakness. But when you stay silent, when you hold your ground without lowering yourself, you rob them of their power. People who provoke often feed off conflict. They thrive on your reaction. Your frustration becomes their fuel. But what happens when you don't react? When you meet their fire with calm, you shift the dynamic entirely. You're no longer dancing to their tune. You become untouchable. Let me tell you about Olivia, a woman I once met during a leadership seminar. She worked with a colleague who constantly tried to sabotage her. Subtle interruptions during meetings, backhanded compliments, whispers of criticism masked as feedback. One day, during an important presentation, this colleague tried again, interrupting her mid-sentence with a smug remark meant to shake her confidence. But Olivia didn't flinch. She paused, looked at him, and simply said nothing. She turned back to her audience and continued with grace. That moment of silence was measured, intentional. It was the turning point. The room saw the truth without her having to explain it. That's what silence can do. It lets the noise reveal itself. So, how do you apply this in your own life? Start by recognizing the game. If someone is clearly baiting you, ask yourself, what do I gain by responding? Most of the time, the answer is nothing. Then, embrace silence, not as a retreat but as a statement. Let them expose their own intentions. And finally, hold on to your inner calm. Real strength isn't about having the last word. It's about knowing you don't need to. In the end, The person who cannot be provoked holds the true power, not because they lack emotion, but because they've mastered it. So, the next time someone tries to drag you into their chaos, choose silence. Watch how quickly they lose interest when you don't play their game. Number 3, when the other person isn't listening. Few things are more exhausting than trying to explain yourself to someone who's already decided not to hear you. You speak with clarity, maybe even with kindness, but their mind is closed. Their ears are shut, and their only goal is to win, not understand. It's like shouting into the wind. You give, but nothing comes back. In moments like these, the wise know when to stop speaking, because here is the Stoic truth. Logic is wasted on ears that refuse to listen. You could offer the most reasoned argument, the clearest facts, the calmest delivery, but if the other person is only waiting for their turn to speak, or worse, only arguing to feed their ego, then your effort becomes an offering to futility. Seneca captured it best when he said, "Arguing with a fool proves there are two." The longer you try to convince someone unwilling to be convinced, the more you entangle yourself in their chaos. Silence, in contrast, does something remarkable. It reveals the futility of the situation without you needing to say another word. I remember a story from a friend. Let's call him Theo. He found himself in a heated workplace debate with a colleague who was absolutely convinced of a false claim. Theo, being well prepared, calmly presented his points. He cited evidence, gave examples, even invited open discussion. But his colleague wasn't listening. He was only defending. The more Theo explained, the more twisted the conversation became. Then Theo stopped, mid-discussion. He simply smiled, nodded once, and said nothing more. The silence stretched. His colleague grew agitated, looking for something to push against. But there was nothing left to fight. Eventually, the conversation ended, not with a dramatic conclusion, but with the quiet dignity of someone who knew when to walk away. That's the lesson. So, how do you know when to choose silence? First, pay attention. If you're repeating yourself and the other person keeps talking in circles, it's not a conversation, it's a performance. Second, use your silence as a mirror. Let their unwillingness echo back to them. And third, protect your peace. Just because someone demands your energy doesn't mean they deserve it. Remember, you don't have to prove your wisdom to someone who's not willing to see it. Sometimes, the most powerful message you can send is your silence, because it says, "I value my peace more than this argument." In the end, not every conversation is worth finishing. Some are better left with a quiet nod and the wisdom to walk away. Number 4, when the truth will only cause unnecessary harm. We're often told that honesty is always the best policy, but the Stoics taught us to look deeper, not just at what we say, but why we say it, because the truth, when used carelessly, can become a blade, and not every blade needs to be drawn. There are moments in life when speaking the truth serves no purpose but to wound. It doesn't bring clarity. It doesn't spark growth. It only causes pain, needless, preventable pain. In those moments, choosing silence isn't avoidance. It's discipline. It's compassion wrapped in wisdom. Epictetus once said, "Only speak if what you have to say is better than silence." That's a powerful filter if your truth doesn't build, enlighten, or heal. What's it really for? Truth is not a weapon to be used in the heat of ego. It's a tool, and like any tool, It must be used with care, at the right time in the right way. Let me share a story. A friend of mine, let's call him Adrian, was at a family dinner when a relative asked for his honest opinion on a deeply personal matter. Adrian knew the truth could be harsh. Yes, he had thoughts. But would speaking them in that moment help? Would it bring growth? Or just shame? He paused. He chose not to respond directly. Instead, he listened. Later, in a quieter setting, he offered gentle guidance, truthful, but wrapped in kindness. And because he waited, the message was received, not resisted. He preserved both the truth and the relationship. This is Stoic wisdom in action. It's easy to speak your mind. It takes strength to measure your words. Not every opinion needs to be shared. Not every truth needs to be delivered raw. Sometimes silence is the bridge that keeps connection alive. So, how do you know when to hold back? First, check your intent. Are you speaking to help, or just to be right? Second, consider the timing. Even truth, when spoken at the wrong moment, can do more harm than good. And finally, embrace silence as a valid response. You don't owe everyone your opinion, especially when it risks causing harm without benefit. At the end of the day, wisdom isn't just about what you know. It's about how and when you express it. If your words won't improve the moment, let them rest. Sometimes, the greatest form of respect for others and for yourself is choosing to remain silent. And if you've stayed with me this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment, share a moment where silence served you better than speech. And don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you. Your support helps bring more of this Stoic insight to life. Thank you for being here. Number 5. When someone is trying to manipulate you. One of the most powerful moments to stay silent is when you realize someone is trying to manipulate you. Manipulators are rarely loud or aggressive. They're subtle. They twist words, plant seeds of doubt, and create confusion disguised as concern. They know how to play with guilt, how to make you feel responsible for their choices, and how to turn your explanations into weapons. But here's the Stoic truth. Manipulation needs your participation. It needs your reaction, your defense, your justification. The more you explain, the more material they have to bend to their advantage. That's why silence isn't just protection, it's power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Silence is the safest reply to deceit," and it still rings true today. When you stay silent in the face of manipulation, you deny the manipulator what they crave most: control. You refuse to enter the game, and that refusal breaks their strategy. Let me share a story. A woman I once coached, let's call her Clara, worked with a colleague who had a habit of offloading tasks onto others under the disguise of friendship. "I thought you were the only one I could count on," he'd say. "Or worse, if you don't help, I might lose this client. But it's okay, you'll just figure it out." Subtle pressure. Guilt masked as vulnerability. At first, Clara would explain. She'd politely say she was too busy, offer compromises, even take on extra work out of discomfort. And every time, her words were turned back on her. Then one day, something changed. When the guilt came again, she said nothing, no argument, no excuse, just silence and a calm return to her own priorities. The result, a colleague floundered. Without her engagement, his manipulation fell flat. She had taken back her power without ever raising her voice. So, how do you apply this wisdom? First, recognize the pattern. If someone constantly makes you feel guilty or shifts blame onto you, pause. Ask yourself, is this about fairness or control? Second, resist the urge to explain. The more you talk, the more fuel they have. And third, let silence draw the line. It's not rude, it's a boundary. A quiet message that says, I see what you're doing, and I choose not to play along. In the end, Stoicism teaches us that we can't control others, but we can control our response. When you stay silent in the face of manipulation, you reclaim your inner freedom. You protect your energy. You choose dignity over drama. So next time someone tries to twist your words or cloud your judgment, don't defend, disengage. Stay silent, stay grounded, and watch their illusion lose its grip. Number 6, when you need to observe first. One of the wisest moments to stay silent is when you're still gathering information, when clarity hasn't yet arrived, and the full picture hasn't come into view. In today's fast-paced world, people rush to speak, to react, to stake their opinion first, as if speed equals intelligence. But the Stoics would disagree. Wisdom doesn't rush. It waits. It watches. It listens. Here is the truth. When you choose silence before forming judgment, you create space for understanding. You resist the trap of assumption. You allow reality to reveal itself instead of forcing your version of it onto the situation. Speaking too quickly may feel bold, but more often it reveals what you don't yet know. Epictetus said it best, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we may listen twice as much as we speak." This wasn't just a clever phrase, it was a principle. Talk less, listen more, observe deeply. The more you understand, the more powerful your words become when the time finally comes to use them. Let me share a story. A man I once worked with, let's call him Elijah, attended a high-stakes corporate meeting where 2 teams clashed over a critical decision. Everyone was chiming in, voices overlapping, opinions flying. Elijah, however, said nothing. He listened. He watched body language, noted key phrases, and picked up on tensions that others missed in their haste to argue. When the noise settled, Elijah spoke, not emotionally, not reactively, but with clarity and precision. He didn't just state his view. He brought insight that reframed the entire conversation. His silence had power because it was rooted in understanding. His boss noticed, and so did everyone else. From that point on, people listened when Elijah spoke, not because he talked often, but because when he did, it mattered. So, how can you use silence as a tool for observation? First, resist the urge to jump in. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean it needs to be shared immediately. Second, listen with full attention, not just to words, but to tone, pauses, and what's left unsaid. That's where real information lives. And third, speak with intention. Say less, but mean more. Let your words carry the weight of thoughtful silence behind them. At the end of the day, silence isn't a lack of opinion. It's the sign of a mind that values clarity over noise. The wisest people aren't those who dominate the room. They're the ones who observe, reflect, and speak when the moment is right. So, before you respond, take a breath. Before you judge, take a look. And before you speak, make sure you've truly understood. That's the Stoic path. That's the power of silence. Number 7, when peace is more valuable than winning. There comes a time when the wisest thing you can do isn't to prove your point, but to protect your peace. Life will give you countless opportunities to argue, to be right, to win the conversation. But before you step into battle, ask yourself, what will it cost me? Not every conflict is worth your energy. Some victories are hollow. They win you the moment but lose you your calm, your relationships, or even your self-respect. The Stoics understood this well. They taught that the highest good isn't being right. It's being in control of yourself. And sometimes that means walking away in silence rather than fighting to be heard. Seneca said, "He who controls his tongue controls his destiny." That's not just poetic, it's practical. When you stay silent in the face of provocation, you're not giving up. You're choosing what matters most, your inner stillness. You're refusing to let someone else dictate your emotional state. Let me tell you a story. A woman I knew, let's call her Elise, got into a tense argument with a close friend. It started with a simple disagreement but quickly spiraled into personal jabs and defensiveness. Elise could have fought harder, could have won by out-arguing her friend. But in that heated moment, she paused. She took a breath and said nothing more. She let her friend have the final word and walked away, not defeated but composed. Later, once the emotions had settled, they revisited the conversation calmly. Because Elise had chosen silence instead of escalation, the friendship survived. She hadn't lost the argument. She had won something far more important, peace and connection. So, how do you know when to choose silence over proving a point? First, ask yourself, will this argument improve my life or just exhaust me? If the answer is the latter, it's not worth it. Second, consider the long-term impact. Will this matter a week from now? A month? A year if not? Walk away. And finally, remember that real strength is quiet. It's not about having the last word. It's about knowing you don't need it. The truth is, the person who doesn't feel the need to win every argument is truly free. Free from ego, free from pointless conflict, free to invest their energy in things that actually matter. At the end of the day, peace is a choice, and silence is often the first step toward it. So, next time you're tempted to fight just to be right, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, is this worth disturbing my inner stillness? If not, let go, because silence in that moment is the loudest proof of your strength. So, the next time you're tempted to speak just to prove a point, pause and ask yourself, is this worth my peace? If the answer is no, choose silence. Not out of fear, but out of strength. Because in a world that rewards noise, your calm is a quiet rebellion. Silence isn't about weakness. It's about wisdom. It's the mark of someone who knows their value doesn't depend on being right all the time. And if this message resonated with you, take a moment to like the video. It helps others find this calm too. If you're drawn to more timeless lessons like these, consider subscribing. There's much more to explore on this journey of inner clarity and quiet strength. Have a moment to share. Drop a quick "stay silent" in the comments. I'd love to know you're walking this path too. And remember, peace isn't found in winning every argument. It's found in knowing which ones are worth your voice. See you in the next video, where we'll dive even deeper into the wisdom that helps you live stronger, speak less, and stand taller. Have you ever wondered why silence feels so uncomfortable in a world that never stops talking? We live in an age where every moment is shared, every thought is posted, and every feeling is broadcasted. But in the noise of constant expression, something sacred is lost. Silence, often mistaken for weakness or indifference, is in truth a mark of deep inner strength. The Stoics knew this well. To speak less is not to be empty, but to be full of clarity, control and calm. There's a quiet power in holding something back. Not every joy needs applause. Not every wound needs an audience. When you speak less, you observe more, you understand more, and most importantly, you protect what matters most: your peace, your purpose, your power. But what happens when we share too much? And why do we feel the urge to reveal ourselves to a world that doesn't always listen with care? In this video, we'll explore the strength of silence and why guarding your inner world might be the wisest decision you ever make. Take a breath, lean in, and let's uncover the quiet truths together. Truth 1. Not every truth deserves an audience. In a world that thrives on oversharing, choosing silence is an act of strength, not secrecy. The Stoics understood this long before social media existed. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid, said Epictetus. Not everyone deserves to know the details of your inner world, because not everyone listens to understand. Many listen to judge, to gossip, or to gain leverage. The more we expose our struggles, our dreams, our doubts, the more we hand over our peace to people who may not respect it. They may smile outwardly but hold envy or judgment beneath the surface. Silence, in contrast, is your shield. It protects your purpose from contamination and keeps your soul from being shaped by fleeting opinions. A Stoic does not speak to impress, but to express truth when necessary. In times of hardship, we often feel compelled to vent our pain, hoping it will lead to relief. But the Stoics saw value in stillness. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Talking too much about our wounds can keep them open. In silence, we allow ourselves the solitude to reflect, the space to heal, and the clarity to endure with dignity." Look to nature. The seed does not shout about its potential. It grows quietly beneath the soil. So too must our goals be nurtured in silence. Noise invites distraction. Quiet invites focus. When we act without announcing, we reclaim our attention from the crowd and redirect it inward toward what truly matters. In the chaos of modern life, silence becomes sanctuary. It helps us rise above impulsive reaction and respond with reason. It shields our energy from being wasted on meaningless conversations or shallow validation. A Stoic understands that not every opinion is worthy of engagement, and not every emotion needs to be externalized. True strength lies in restraint. The more you say, the more you give away. The less they know, the more grounded you remain. Speak when your words carry weight. Otherwise, let your silence be your philosophy in action. As Marcus Aurelius said, the more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. So protect your peace, guard your spirit, and remember, silence is not emptiness. It is wisdom, measured and timeless. Truth 2. The quiet strength of mystery. In a time where self-disclosure is celebrated and oversharing is the norm, preserving mystery has become a quiet form of strength. To the Stoic mind, mystery is not manipulation, it is mastery. It is the ability to control how much of your inner world you offer to others. And more importantly, why, as Epictetus reminds us, Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly. Those who truly know themselves have no need to explain themselves to everyone. There is power in restraint. The less you reveal, the more others fill in the blanks, and often they paint a version of you that commands more respect than reality ever could. People are drawn to the unknown. Transparency may build comfort, but mystery builds presence. When every detail is laid bare, predictability follows, and with predictability comes the loss of personal power. A Stoic does not aim to be understood by everyone, nor do they seek validation from public perception. They understand that the more you expose, the easier it is for others to define, control, or even diminish you. But when you hold back, when you choose silence and intention, others are left uncertain. That uncertainty is not weakness, it is your shield. Just as Marcus Aurelius advised, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. The thoughts we guard protect the harmony of the soul. When we give away too much of ourselves too freely, we risk staining that harmony with noise, judgment, and distraction. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They allow in only what serves your reason and virtue. Sharing too easily, even with good intentions, can invite misunderstandings, jealousy, or manipulation. Mystery does not mean dishonesty. It means wisdom in knowing what should remain within, and what the world is truly worthy of seeing. In silence, in selectivity, in the art of keeping certain things sacred, we create space to live deliberately, not performatively. Let others wonder. Let your presence speak more than your words. Because in a noisy world, those who move in quiet purpose stand. Or Truth 3, how oversharing weakens your sense of self. The Stoics taught that true freedom begins with inner mastery, and inner mastery begins with knowing what to guard. When we overshare, we open the gates of our inner citadel to those who may not have earned the right to enter. Not all who listen are allies. Some gather information not to understand, but to use. As Epictetus warned, be careful with what you reveal, for the truth in the wrong hands becomes a weapon. In revealing too much, our plans, our ambitions, our private struggles, we hand others the power to distract, discourage, or even sabotage. People may smile in your presence and applaud your dreams, but in silence harbor envy or doubt. Some will mimic your ideas. Others will undermine your confidence with subtle jabs dressed as concern. Every word you give them becomes a thread they can pull when the time is right. Silence, on the other hand, is sovereignty. The less others know, the more they speculate, and in speculation lies influence. When your next move is unknown, your direction cannot be intercepted. The Stoics prized this inner stillness, not as secrecy, but as strategic restraint. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy, and the best defense is to deny your enemy a target. Those who always explain themselves, who lay every thought bare, may be liked, but rarely are they respected. Their words become noise, diluted by overuse. But the one who speaks only when necessary, whose voice is chosen like a sword unsheathed only with purpose, that voice echoes, that presence lingers. Mystery in this light becomes not avoidance, but self-respect. It allows your strength to speak without needing translation, and your vulnerabilities to remain protected until entrusted to the right hands. In relationships, personal or professional, This mystery sustains depth and dignity. The moment everything is revealed, the edge dulls, the connection flattens, and others may begin to take you for granted. Worse still are the false friends, the ones who stay close not to uplift, but to compare, to compete, or to quietly resent. They celebrate your success in public, but shrink from it in private. They don't wish for your failure, but they quietly hope you never rise too far above them. These people wear kindness like a cloak, but their presence is a weight on your growth. The Stoic does not harbor paranoia, but practices discernment. It is not about shutting everyone out, but about opening the door selectively. Kindness is noble, but blind trust is folly. Share not from the need to be seen, but from the confidence of knowing who sees clearly. Let your life be guided by the virtue of reason, not the hunger for recognition. A true ally, like a true Stoic, needs no constant proof. They stand with you in silence, support you without applause, and listen not just with their ears, but with their character. So protect your words, guard your inner citadel. The world is full of listeners, but few who truly understand. Choose wisely, for not everyone deserves to carry a piece of your story. Truth 4. Guard your vision from distracted ears. Every great dream begins as a quiet spark within. It is fragile, personal, and sacred, something only you can see clearly in the beginning. But when we expose that spark too early, we risk extinguishing it under the cold breath of judgment, comparison, and doubt. The Stoics remind us that not all opinions matter, and not all listeners are worthy of hearing what is still in the making. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." Oversharing our visions, especially in their infancy, invites a chorus of voices, some supportive, many intrusive. Not everyone who listens does so with empathy. Some listen with skepticism, others with envy, and many simply out of curiosity. Their words may be wrapped in polite concern. "Are you sure that's realistic?" or "What if it doesn't work out?" But underneath such remarks lies fear, often their own, projected onto you. The Stoics would call this external interference a disruption of your inner tranquility. Ataraxia. Allowing these voices into your sacred space replaces rational clarity with emotional turbulence. Even subtle doubt can shake a vision not yet rooted. When we let too many people in on our path, our motivation begins to shift from virtue and purpose to performance and validation. Jealousy is another corrosive force, often hidden behind smiles. Some people do not seek to walk beside you. They seek to measure your steps against their own limitations. If your dream reminds them of what they haven't dared to pursue, they may downplay it not to protect you, but to comfort themselves. Their discouragement becomes a quiet sabotage. Worse still is the illusion of support from those who listen only to compete or steal. An idea shared before its foundation is laid can be taken and used by someone with more resources or fewer principles. The Stoic answer is not fear, but prudence. As Seneca wrote, "It is more civilized to make fun of life than to bewail it." Protecting your vision is not paranoia, it is wisdom. There is also a hidden cost in speaking too much: the illusion of progress. Talking about your goals may feel rewarding in the moment, but it replaces action with satisfaction. The more we discuss, the less we do. The energy once meant for building gets spent on words, not deeds. In Stoicism, action aligned with virtue is the true path, not projection, not perception. Dreams, like seeds, grow best in silence. They need solitude to take root, discipline to be nourished, and time to flourish. When we guard them, we give them strength. When we share them too freely, we open the door to doubt, pressure, and misdirection. Silence, in this case, is not withholding, it is protecting. It is a choice to nurture something valuable away from the noise of the crowd. Not everyone deserves to hear your vision. Not every audience is a source of strength. Choose with care whom you let into your inner world. Trust the few who water your dreams, not those who drain them. The Stoic builds with intention, not for applause, but for truth. Truth 5. Protect your dreams from negative energy. Happiness, like virtue, thrives in stillness. It does not need an audience. It needs protection in a world obsessed with broadcasting every smile and milestone. The Stoic seeks something far more enduring, a peace that is untouched by opinion. As Epictetus once said, if you want to be happy, stop wishing for things that depend on others. There is a quiet wisdom in keeping joy private. The more we expose our happiness, the more we subject it to external forces, curiosity, envy, judgment. Not everyone who sees your joy will celebrate it. Some will compare it to their own emptiness. Others will subtly question whether you deserve it. Even a careless comment said in passing can leave a shadow over once felt pure. These are not psychological wounds. They are breaches in the harmony of the soul. As the Stoics would describe it, privacy acts as armor. It allows our happiness to grow undisturbed, to remain authentic. The moment we share too soon or too often, we invite expectations, ours and others. Suddenly, we begin to perform rather than simply experience. Joy becomes something we must maintain, justify, or defend. But as Marcus Aurelius warned, never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect. Living to please the crowd is a slow erosion of the self. This is why the deepest joys are often the quietest ones, the laughs shared in private, the silent moments of success, the unspoken pride of overcoming something difficult without needing applause. When we keep our happiness sacred, we preserve its meaning. It remains rooted in virtue, not in vanity. The same applies to relationships and personal victories. When we invite the world too early into what is still forming, we allow it to distort, influence, or even damage what could have become something lasting. A relationship is strongest when built between two souls, not two profiles performing for a digital stage. And success, when celebrated in silence or with a trusted few, retains its purity. It is lived, not displayed. The Stoic path does not reject joy. It refines it. It teaches us to be present in our experience, not distracted by its presentation, to enjoy what is good without fearing others' reactions. In doing so, we guard our inner peace from the storm of comparison and commentary. Not everything needs to be shared. Not every joy needs to be witnessed. When happiness is nurtured in silence, it grows free from expectation, from interference, from judgment. And when it has matured, it will not ask for recognition. It will simply radiate from the inside out. Truth 6. Why vulnerability can be misused against you. In Stoic thought, vulnerability is not a flaw, but it is a force that must be respected. To open oneself is a noble act, but only when done with discernment. Seneca reminds us, a sword never kills anybody, it is a tool in the killer's hand. Likewise, our openness in the wrong hands can be turned into a weapon, not of understanding, but of manipulation. In an ideal world, revealing our fears and wounds would lead to compassion and connection. But the Stoic is trained to see the world not as we wish it to be, but as it is. Not everyone who listens is a friend. Some nod in empathy while storing your struggles as ammunition. Others speak gently while quietly taking mental notes. Vulnerability becomes dangerous when handed to those who have not earned the right to carry it. Manipulation often begins where misplaced trust lies. If someone knows your fear of abandonment, they may use silence as punishment. If they know your longing for approval, they may withhold praise to control your emotions. This is not kindness, it is coercion, and it corrodes your autonomy from within. In Stoicism, this loss of inner sovereignty is the greatest threat to the soul's peace. Betrayal is another face of misused vulnerability. In anger or envy, what you once shared in confidence may be twisted, mocked, or exposed. A moment of openness becomes a future of regret. And while the Stoic does not fear betrayal, they prepare for it not by closing their heart, but by choosing their confidence wisely. The modern world, amplified by digital platforms, tempts us to share everything. But what is posted today can be repurposed tomorrow. A confession made in pain may later resurface as ridicule. The Stoic understands that nothing external, no applause, no sympathy, is worth the loss of inner control. As Marcus Aurelius warned, the more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. Guarding vulnerability does not mean masking pain. It means understanding that not all battles are fought publicly. Some wounds heal better in solitude. Some truths grow stronger when held in silence. We do not need to be invulnerable, but we must be selective. Just as we would not hand our home's keys to a stranger, we must not give away the keys to our emotional citadel carelessly. Boundaries in Stoic practice are not barriers. They are expressions of self-respect. True allies do not demand your openness. They earn it. They do not use your struggles as leverage, but as an invitation to stand with you. And if you walk the path of reason, you'll learn it is not unkind to protect your peace. It is wisdom in action. The strength lies not in how much we reveal, but in how well we discern. Vulnerability is powerful, but only when it is guarded by virtue and shared through choice, not impulse. Truth 7. The impact of letting actions speak louder than words. In the Stoic worldview, it is not what we say that defines us. It is what we do and how consistently we do it. Words, though powerful, are fleeting. They can be misunderstood, twisted, or forgotten. But actions leave a mark. They reveal character, build trust, and speak truths far deeper than any speech could express. As Epictetus taught, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. The world is filled with noise, opinions, promises, declarations. In such an environment, the person who chooses to move in silence, to act without the need for constant validation, stands apart. While many boast of intentions, the Stoic silently follows through. Their strength lies not in how loudly they speak, but in how deliberately they live. To act with purpose is to build a reputation grounded in reliability. People remember the quiet friend who showed up in hard times, the mentor who led by example, the parent who lived with integrity. These actions endure long after words fade. In contrast, Those who speak often but do little find their voices gradually losing weight, because repetition without follow-through turns speech into noise. Letting action lead also spares us from unnecessary conflict. When judged or underestimated, the Stoic does not defend with words. They let results speak. As Marcus Aurelius put it, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. A quiet achievement silences louder critics more effectively than any argument. Action also fosters inner peace. When we focus on doing rather than discussing, we conserve energy and build momentum. We avoid the trap of performative living and step into a deeper rhythm, one of discipline, clarity, and silent confidence. There is no need to compete for attention when your life itself becomes the message. Those who let their actions speak often carry a grounded presence. They inspire not by shouting from the rooftops, but by embodying values with unwavering consistency. In doing so, they remind us that true transformation requires not announcement, but alignment with virtue, reason, and quiet strength. In the end, the Stoic does not aim to impress, but to express their principles through action, because the most powerful statement you can make is not what you say, but what you consistently do. Truth 8. Live for yourself, not for validation. Living for yourself is one of the greatest acts of Stoic freedom. Yet many trade that freedom for approval, chasing the applause of others while silencing their own inner voice. In doing so, they surrender their autonomy, seeking worth in what lies beyond their control. As Epictetus warned, if you wish to be free, do not wish for anything that depends on others. Validation is fleeting, one moment praised, the next forgotten. When we shape our choices around how others will perceive us, we abandon our path and begin walking theirs. Oversharing, often mistaken for authenticity, becomes a performance, one that distracts us from living in alignment with reason and virtue. The Stoic does not need an audience to confirm their value. They act with intention, guided by what is right, not what is popular. True confidence isn't loud. It doesn't seek applause. It lives in stillness, in quiet decisions, in the dignity of being misunderstood but undeterred. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more." That is poor. The same is true for praise. To live fully, live inwardly. Cherish your privacy. Trust your values. Let your fulfillment come not from validation, but from virtue. So let me leave you with this. Will you keep chasing validation? Or will you choose to live quietly, with purpose for yourself? Not everything needs to be shared. Some dreams grow stronger in silence. Some peace is only found in privacy. Protect your inner world. Guard what matters. Let your life speak softly but powerfully. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to subscribe for more insights on how silence, stillness, and strength can transform the way we live. And in the comments, just write, "Stay silent." Remember, you don't need to explain your worth, just live it. And in the next video, we'll go even deeper into the Stoic art of choosing peace over noise. When I was young, I never thought much about the kind of people I surrounded myself with. I assumed that everyone was basically good, and that most people would treat me with respect and kindness. However, as I grew older and experienced more of the world, I began to realize that there were certain types of people I needed to avoid. My mentor, a wise and experienced individual, took it upon himself to educate me on the subject. He explained to me that there were certain individuals out there whose negative behaviors and traits could potentially harm my well-being. My mentor presented me with a list of types of people that I needed to be cautious around. These included envious individuals, gossipers, greedy individuals, angry individuals, egoistic individuals, toxic individuals, aggressive individuals, constantly critical individuals, manipulators, and chronic complainers. Each type had its own unique set of characteristics that made them difficult to deal with. At first, I was skeptical about the need to avoid these individuals. I couldn't see how someone's behavior could affect me so significantly, but as I listened to my mentor explain each type in detail, I began to understand why they needed to be avoided. For example, envious individuals would resent my successes and try to bring me down, while gossipers would spread rumors about me to others. Greedy individuals would always put their own interests before mine, and angry individuals would take out their frustrations on me. As I continued to learn from my mentor, I realized that these individuals weren't just difficult to deal with. They could also cause long-term damage to my mental and emotional well-being. Toxic individuals, for instance, could drain my energy and make me feel constantly drained and exhausted. Aggressive individuals could make me feel unsafe, while chronic complainers could drag me into their cycle of negativity. However, as I learned to identify these individuals and avoid them, I also began to understand the importance of empathy. While it's true that some individuals exhibit behaviors that we might find unacceptable, it's important to remember that everyone has their own story and struggles. Even those who seem like the worst individuals may have gone through experiences that have shaped their behavior in negative ways. By showing empathy and understanding, we can help them become better individuals and perhaps even help them change their behavior. In conclusion, while it's important to be aware of the types of individuals we should avoid, it's equally important to remember that everyone deserves our empathy and understanding. We may not know what someone is going through, but by showing them kindness and compassion, we can help them become better individuals and improve our relationship with them. By surrounding ourselves with positive and supportive people, we can create a happier and healthier environment for ourselves and those around us. It is said that you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. It is crucial to choose your companions wisely. As a young man, I had little knowledge of the different types of people that existed in this world. I didn't understand why some people were easier to get along with than others. However, as I grew older, I had the privilege of learning from a wise old sage who shared with me types of people to avoid. The first personality type he mentioned was the envious. They are the ones who cannot stand seeing others succeed or have more than them. They will stop at nothing to pull you down and make sure you don't surpass them. They can be very destructive and toxic to one's growth and happiness. Next up was the gossip. They thrive on other people's misery and love to share secrets. Their words can be poisonous, and they have no qualms about ruining someone's reputation. This type of person should be handled with caution and never be trusted. Greed is another character trait that the sage warned me about. People who are greedy are only interested in what they can gain from you. They are never satisfied with what they have and will always want more. This insatiable appetite can lead to manipulation and control. The angry are easy to spot, and once you do, it's best to stay away from them. They have a grudge against the world and take out their frustration on anyone within reach. Being around them can be dangerous, as they can explode at any moment. Egotistical individuals are another type of person to watch out for. They believe themselves to be superior to others and think that they are above the law. They can be arrogant and rude, and their self-centered attitude can be hard to handle. Toxic individuals are dangerous because they are master manipulators. They feed off chaos and drama and thrive on making others feel bad about themselves. Once they sense vulnerability, they pounce and can suck the life out of you. Aggressive individuals are quick to anger and violence. They are impulsive and lack self-control, which makes them unpredictable and dangerous. It's essential to keep a safe distance from them. Constantly critical individuals are nitpicky and pick at everything you do. They find fault in everything and can be harsh critics. They can be demoralizing and stressful to be around. Manipulative individuals use guilt and emotional blackmail to get what they want. They are experts at playing the victim and can turn things around to make you look like the villain. Be careful when dealing with these individuals, as they can twist situations to their advantage. Lastly, chronic complainers are energy vampires. They drain your spirits and leave you feeling drained and tired. Nothing seems to ever satisfy them, and they constantly find something to whine about. Staying away from these individuals is key to maintaining your mental health. Although it may seem daunting to avoid all these types of people, it is possible. Remember, you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. So choose wisely and surround yourself with positivity. Show empathy to everyone, regardless of their shortcomings. But also remember to protect yourself from toxicity. Empathy does not mean tolerating abuse. You deserve better than that. By following the advice of my wise old sage, I have managed to steer clear of these undesirable personalities, and my life is all the richer for it. Surrounding myself with positive people has brought me happiness and fulfillment, and now I hope to pass on this valuable lesson to others. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if this content was rewarding for your life. I'll leave 2 videos here that you might be interested in watching too. See you soon.